So if you combine a handful of things, most people are not excellent at even one thing. If you can be excellent in things that cross over, though, then that's incredibly powerful for you to be a content creator. If you're good at photography, it makes it easier to be better at graphic design and video, for example. That's like how I built up my skill sets is they cross over and they complement and they compound. And then if you get into software ecosystems, like if you go all in on Adobe, you learn one Adobe software, you've learned them all. They designed it that way. So it's easy to skill up. So I would tell people that you have to skill up. The other thing that you want to do is you want to learn how to be more articulate, how to talk to people. You want to also make sure that you refine your communication skills in every way that you possibly can. You can do that for free with something like Toastmasters, for example. You can find Toastmasters communities and you can become a better public speaker that way. And that will help you in almost every endeavor in life. You want to put yourself in a position where you learn a little bit about the savvy of sales and marketing, because that's going to benefit you in life always, of course. And you want to learn the tangibles of networking. There's a great book by my friend Tyler Wagner. It's actually a really short book and it's cheap as hell. And it's called Conference Crushing. It tells you if you're going to go to an in-person event, it gives you an agenda and it tells you what you need to do, how to find the right people at the event, how to stay in touch, how to follow up, how to create value, how to introduce yourself. Works even if you're a shy introvert. Like I'm an introverted person in the real world, but there are things I did to give myself an advantage or to help me and to overcome that and to build more confidence. So this can be incredibly powerful for a lot of you. I would say something that's a skill everyone overlooks, learn touch typing. It'll make everything faster. If you can touch type, if you can type without looking at the keyboard, everything in life becomes faster so much more quickly. You're so much more productive, ultimate productivity. Other thing is time management. If you master time management, everything in life is streamlined. So productivity is a huge deal. And if you have limited time for doing everything, once you learn how to do proper prioritization and productivity, you now have more hours in the day and it's not even close. So these are the things that I hope people like kind of take away from this. And that's why I think it's going to really empower them the most to make some kind of change, whether they're building an online business like you with media buying, whether they want to dive into online content creation, even if they want to do career development in the field that they're in and get further ahead. All of these things are incredibly valuable to do.
Now, with going at creating a YouTube channel and being a professional creator, like you're saying, to cut through the noise, having your unfair advantage, I think is one of the terms a lot of YouTubers use.
Yes.
Sometimes people don't want to be a professional YouTuber in that sense. They actually want to have fun with it, Is there still space to have fun on YouTube and create a business on YouTube, in your opinion?
I think it's rare, and I think it's mostly for people that already have privileged positions, to be honest with you, or it's becoming that way. I'm not saying it's impossible. I've just noticed a trend to where that idea is becoming something that is only available to people with a certain amount of privilege, because for them, if they failed at YouTube in any way, their life is still going to be wonderful and it's going to be great. Like a lot of those people, they come from these backgrounds to where failure means, okay, I go back to mommy and daddy in their like $500,000 home in the suburbs. Versus for a lot of people, that's not their reality. If they go and they try and they pursue something that doesn't work out, it's going to be a disaster. So I think it's not responsible for me to sell the dream that people would expect me to say, yeah, you can do it and you can have fun and you can make money and you can do. Like, no, that is not most people's situation. Most people need to make a choice about where they are in their life. Your life may not have room for this to be anything more than a hobby. It's like what Marquez was saying, like he could be an excellent student, he can be an excellent athlete, and he can be an excellent YouTuber. But if he extended himself anywhere beyond that, all of it will fall apart. That was what he said in our interview together. And he's pretty much the biggest tech creator. I think he's at 17 million subscribers now, started with nothing. His first 100 videos, he only got 78 subscribers. He really started from nothing. But the thing is, he wasn't trying at 14 to just like, like he stayed in school. He grinded. He stayed an excellent student throughout school, A student, took everything seriously. And when he was doing his sports, he was all in on that. He made YouTube right size in his life. I think that the problem is you have a lot of people, they have a 9-to-5 job and they have to live a reasonable life as an adult, or they have to be a student, or they have family and they have kids. They're doing all this stuff. And then they realistically only have 10, 20 hours a week of free time. And then they're still trying to do content creation and have hobbies and still make money at it. It's unreasonable. They're extended way too far. It's not mentally healthy for a lot of them. A lot of them, it's mentally draining. It's also why when anything happens on their channel, they take it much more personally and it hurts more and they're more desperate about it. And the thing is, it might not be something that they have room for it to be anything more than a hobby until something else changes in their life. And YouTube may not be the best vehicle to be a change agent in their life. Now, again, I would say something entirely differently if my only goal was to get more people to do coaching with me, because I'm talking you out of it in a way. I'm talking you out of YouTube, but I'm being realistic about this is what the working class creator's lifestyle is. The working class creator works 40 to 50 hours a week. Then they still have to come home and be a reasonable adult and they're exhausted. They're running on fumes. And a lot of them make the mistake of after work trying to go and film a video. I would say that they shouldn't be filming a video. They should do that on their day off when they're at peak energy and they're rested. In fact, that's why I have to coach a lot of people to do is to wait until you're rested to film a video. When you come off of work, maybe what you do is you prioritize your family. Like if you work a 9-to-5 job, you come home, maybe what you should do is you should prioritize your family. Now, what you could do is as long as you're going to sleep on time and you're going to sleep early, you could wake up at 5 a.m. You could wake up much earlier and have 2 hours in the morning that you can do deep work. And that deep work of 2 hours is worth probably the same equivalent of working 4 to 5 hours at your job because you get to work in silence. It's your first energy without anybody else taking that energy from you first. So you wake up at 5 in the morning, you get to do like an hour of personal care, self-care, grooming, get yourself dressed for the day. But then you get to work for like 2 hours before you have to start your commute. And for that 2 hours, of deep, focused, concentrated work where no one's distracting you and nothing else has siphoned any of your energy is your most potent work energy that you have. And it can be worth 4 to 5 hours of work you would normally do distracted at the job. So now you've done that and you feel good and you feel less anxious because when you go to work and you take care of everything you need to for your family and you come home, you can be present with your family after work and they know that your attention is not divided. Then when you ask on your weekends to say, I need some room for me, I can sleep 8 hours and I can still spend 6 or 8 hours with you, family, but I need this 6 or 8 hours on Saturday and this other 6 or 8 hours on Sunday to just do some deep work sessions on my dream so that I don't have to keep making compromises. That tends to make the most sense for people. Now, again, I'm just using Monday to Friday as a default, what people's shifts are, whatever. Some people work late shifts, they work third shift, they can't do it this way, but whatever, you have to figure it out. I'm just using a default example. That working class creator is going to be better served trying to do that. Also, not doing as ambitious videos. Do videos that you can do that are reasonable, that will not take you more than 2 hours to edit and not more than an hour to film. That way you can keep up a content cadence where you never miss a week of uploads and you can upload 1 to 2 times a week and you can be ahead by 1 to 2 weeks. And that way you have room in your life to where if you do need to take a break, you need to take a week off, you get sick, you have a vacation, you're not then anxious about derailing the momentum that you have for your channel. And again, you also still are not stressing out your family. You're being present in whatever capacity you have to be in your family. You're doing all your personal and self-care. This is how, even if you're a working class creator, you could theoretically make this right size in your life. The problem with it is what I'm describing, you don't get another hobby and you don't get to binge watch Netflix or play video games. This is your new hobby and your hobby is also a hustle. And that's what that would have to look like for it to be reasonable to have a chance of growing and having success without risking your job or risking your marriage or your family and getting divorced. And then it's really going to be hard to be a content creator.
Mm-hmm. And this mentally,
pay that
mentally, like your energy, your mindset is shot.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So again, I try to take the most reasonable approach to content creation, even teaching content creation. Almost no one will ever talk about this thing that I talk about with like being a working class creator. Here's what you do: 9 to 5, kids, family, all this stuff. And like, hey, this is how you put your family first. This is how you also create room for yourself to do this. Because if you Monday through Friday are doing 2 hours of deep work in the morning, that's 10 hours of deep work. 10 hours of deep work is worth 30 hours of regular work. So, because it's just pure energy and it's focus and it's flow state, right? Especially in the morning, because there's silence, there's no distraction, nothing else. So you have that cone of silence to work in. Then on the weekends, when you're going ahead and you're adding another 5 hours 2 days a week, that's another 10 hours that you got out of it. Now, great. You got 20 hours of like more focused attention work. if you're at your 9 to 5 job, the reality is the job is probably wasting 20 hours of your time anyway on meetings and superfluous nonsense stuff. You probably only did 20 hours of productive work anyway. So 20 hours of productive work is reasonable for someone to achieve their dream. But you have to also be reasonable about what you're making, because you can't compete with a creator that has 40 hours of focus or even 60 hours of focus, or can hire other people's 20, 40 hours of focus a piece.
Yep.
And that's what the biggest people in your niche usually are. So when you're an army of one, you have to also create different conditions for what victory is and what quality is you cannot compete with someone who they and their team put 100 hours a week in of nothing else when you're putting 10, 20 hours of scraps in.
And to that
It's
point,
fair. It's not
systems are going
reasonable.
to become a necessity, right? What are some of the systems that you usually teach
Yes.
for people to implement into their business? Because as a solo podcaster and founder, that I'm building those systems, and that's where I kind of find it challenging, because it's not only the systems itself that you need to create, but you need to create systems that are relevant to the people that are going to be within it, right? So, yeah, I would love to get your insight there.
Yes. So a lot of it is you have to look at what in your life is actually the bottleneck and challenge around your time or your investment capital or your manpower or your expertise or experience or education. So you have to address a lacking usually in that. And that acronym spells time, by the way. So it's always a time problem. So you have to say, okay, what do I need to do that gives me speed? What do I need to do that compensates for a lack of resources? What do I do that compensates for the fact that I'm a one-man band? And what do I do that is reasonable for my level of experience or education? So that means working backwards from that. One of those things is everything you use needs to be simple. Everything you use needs to be simple. So it needs to not be overly complex, because now the bottleneck on learning it is taking away from the ability to do it. So one of the problems is, and one of the reasons, by the way, if people are going to look at courses, don't also buy courses off of how many hours they sell you of how long the thing is. Because the thing is, you spend too much time learning and not enough time doing. You need something to where I consumed it, I understand it, I can evaluate, I can put it into practice immediately and more quickly. I think that sometimes for certain things, like if, for example, video editing is something to where if something is consolidating certain video editing workflows and processes and techniques into a thing, then you might only want a course that's maybe somewhere from 4 to 8 hours, because you can get through the material in a weekend and absorb it. And then you can also use it as a reference, and you can start executing on it with spare time and then see what is and isn't working for you. And that's also a good way to be able to evaluate it. So you need the ability to execute. If something is too long to go through the process to completion, that's one of the other problems with people not completing things. People don't complete things because they're overwhelmed. Now, sometimes they also don't complete things because they didn't need the full thing. They only needed a specific piece of it to serve their purposes. So sometimes what you want to look is you want to look for micro opportunities, micro courses. Now, a good way of finding some of these is Skillshare. Skillshare, you pay $15 a month, not sponsored, by the way, not sponsored, but Skillshare, $15 a month, and you have access to some of these courses. I think Ali Abdal has one if you're a Final Cut Pro person. I'm an Adobe Premiere person, but you would want to go through something that you can finish in a weekend to say, I went through the process, I did the things it said, and I did the exercises, but I still need the references because I'm not sharp at this thing yet. I don't have the experience, but you want to be able to act on it. So you need the ability to have room to learn, but also room to practice and to act. So don't overcommit to very long courses for that reason, where the material is too deep. You need something that you can, something bite-sized that you can chew on and that you can work with. Then you want to apply that. So you want to say, okay, I need tools, by the way. Maybe you don't buy the most expensive tool like Final Cut or Adobe Premiere. Maybe you start with a free or cheap video editing software, because the learning curve will be lower, which means you can master the tool faster. So the tool is good, but you can master it faster. So maybe it's something like Adobe Rush. Maybe it's Film.
Yeah,
DaVinci is a really long learning curve because it competes with Photoshop and Premiere. It's free, but it's complicated. Maybe DaVinci is good as the thing to upgrade to, but it might be complexity-wise, it might feel intimidating. And there's less documentation and community around it than Final Cut and Adobe because of how long they've been around. So do keep that in mind. But I like DaVinci and the fact that it's free, and then the paid version is buy it forever. So that is a good thing. But maybe you look at Adobe Rush, maybe it's Filmora, maybe it's I think LumaFusion if you're on like iPad. I don't recommend editing on your phone. If it's all you have, great. But I recommend saving up and at least getting an iPad or iPad mini. When you're video editing, that screen real estate matters. Also, when you're editing, consider if you getting either, if you have your glasses, get some blue blocker in there, or if you don't wear glasses, wear blue blocker glasses when you edit in long-term sessions. Gonna reduce eye strain and focus. When you're gonna get headphones, maybe you invest in something like these DT 770s. The reason is when you wear them with glasses, doesn't create headaches and eye strain as much because it doesn't, the pressure. So it's like actually good for long term to have these monitor headphones. So sometimes you want to look at the ergonomics because you don't want to get repetitive stress disorder. You want to get a good mouse so that you might want a wrist guard. You might want to look at things, good chair for your back, or at least use cushions like I do. Because you're going to sit down and edit long term, these things are going to become painful. It's going to discourage you for doing it. So you want to look at that. Manpower. Sometimes you do need to borrow somebody to just film a scene for you and get behind the phone or the camera so that you can add something more dynamic to your videos. But do not plan your videos as a way that requires other people's manpower. Make your videos as a solo creator planned just around yourself and your own resources. For lacking investment capital, like I said earlier, look at things that are affordable and free to streamline. So in terms of also your time-saving systems, templatize everything. So make your thumbnails something that you are not working completely from scratch every time. Make templates around your thumbnails. Don't sit there and agonize all the time over your music. Pick 12 or 16 songs to be your soundtrack for your stuff for the next 3 to 6 months. And then recycle that process, because then you're not hunting for the right music all the time. You're now streamlining that and the decision creep. Decision creep holds people up a lot. So for systems, you want to reduce the number of choices that you're making. So here are my fonts. So I'm not worrying about it. You want a system for your branding. Here are my fonts. Here are my colors. Here's the way I do things. So that it's now a system that might sound boring, but it's actually wildly practical, especially for the person who doesn't have the abundance of time, resources, or help. So you should be, in my mind, you should be doing this for that reason. It also is going to mean that everything you do, you are getting better faster because you're incrementally improving on what is and just refining it instead of starting from scratch and relearning things over and over and over. So now you're compounding the effort of your education in an exponential way going forward because you're just stacking. That's what you want to do. And so those are probably some of those practical things in terms of systems. The other thing is if your titles are working, try to find ways to use that title over and over again, like how Mr. Beast uses the surviving 24 hours, 50 hours. Try to build systems around everything that you possibly can. You might be worried about being repetitive, but the reality is people actually take comfort in things where they know what to expect. So actually, instead of worrying about being repetitive and boring, put yourself in a position where you say, no, I'm setting expectations that I can deliver on.
I'm going to be a little bit selfish here. What advice do you have for podcasters to grow? Because I find being a podcaster and growing the podcast element is a lot more challenging than being a YouTuber and growing. I'd love to get your insights there and what differences there is between growing a podcast and growing a YouTube channel. Both.
Growing the audio or the video or both? Okay, so for the audio side, part of it is you want to start using podcast 2.0 protocols, which means you want transcripts for everything. You want to make sure that your show notes are appropriate and detailed and done very well. You want to have a good description for the podcast and what it is. You want to choose your categories wisely for your podcast categories. You want to choose those wisely and very intentionally. You want to make sure you have beautiful cover art, probably pay somebody for that, get some photography work done. Beautiful cover art. You want to look at the best person in your niche and say your cover art should be able to stand next to theirs without you being embarrassed. You need to have structured, good show notes. ChatGPT and things can help with that. FlowSend.ai, ChatGPT, Claude, these can help you with things like show notes and stuff like that. You need a good episode description for every single episode. You need to also consider having a trailer for the podcast as well. And so you want that. You want to make sure you're distributing on all the audio podcast platforms and that you're meeting all of their standards and best practices for that, which as long as you're doing the things I suggested, you probably should be fine. Keywords can matter when it comes to podcasts. So you want to do thorough keyword research. And what you want to do with keywords, it will, a lot of people confuse keywords with tags, but with keywords, a lot of the stuff you want to do is you want to look at broad match, phrase match, and exact match. So exact match is people are looking for exactly this, which means that might be the name of your podcast guest, for example, the name of your own show, your name. And then also you might want to put things like, in terms of exact, if there is an exact thing that is the really important thing in that episode, you might want to make sure that that detail is in there. If it's something that's in the title that matches it, then you might want to use phrases that are other versions of what the title or the main theme is. And that's your phrase match ones. Then broad match is the broader themes that someone cares about to also care about what's in this episode. So you want to do things like that. So primary example would be like if you had Pat Flynn on, for example, Smart Passive Income. If you were interviewing Pat Flynn, you'd want to have Smart Passive Income podcast as an exact match thing in your keywords. You'd want to have Pat Flynn in there. You want to have Pat Flynn podcaster. You'd want to have your name in there. And then for phrase match, you'd want things like if it was something about like, how Pat Flynn became a world-class, public speaker, or if it was, how Pat Flynn became a multimillionaire, you would put phrases in there like how Pat Flynn became a millionaire, how Pat Flynn made his first million, how Pat Flynn built his business. You put phrases in that relate to the overall subject matter. And then you put more broad match stuff is you use a handful of these like, on entrepreneurship, making money podcasting, making money with blogs, so on and so forth. So the broader categories. So that would be how you do that component of it. The main thing you want to do for both is you want to distribute video clips across multiple platforms, and you want to tag your guest in the thing for their socials for that particular platform. In those things, you want to get the guest to share stuff on their own platform as well. You want to distribute the audio in your email newsletter. That's going to probably be easier for most people to consume from their email than the video, to be honest. You could try both, but the audio is probably the easier to consume thing for wherever they are to be consuming a newsletter, because the audio is passive and they can do that. The audio downloads are the numbers, and the audio listens are the numbers that you actually sell to sponsors. So you double it. Your sponsorship won't come from the YouTube videos. It'll really come from the audio podcast numbers. You use that plus the aggregate numbers of the clips across all the platforms. Use that in your marketing as well. And then the YouTube numbers for the main show are a bonus number that you use, because you get better sales off of the audio downloads for the podcast, and audio is also passive. Also, people respond and buy more from audio podcasts, believe it or not. So that's a real thing. You want to make sure in your show notes that you're linking to your references, linking to your affiliate links, linking to your sponsors. So you want to make sure you get that structured and right. You might want to make a template for that so it's easy for you to copy and paste your structure into all of those to make it easy. So that becomes important. You want to market and promote your newsletter in every single podcast, and you want to have a link to the newsletter in every single podcast. And in all the clips, the goal of the clips is to link only really back to two things. You're not linking them back to the YouTube channel. You really want to link them back to the audio podcast, and you want to link them back to your newsletter. Those are really the two things you want to get out of the clips. Everyone's too obsessed with growing YouTube. YouTube is there to grow your brand, grow your business, grow your revenue. You're not needing to just be a digital sharecropper for YouTube forever and keep giving them traffic for no reason. Your goal is to steal traffic from YouTube, not to keep letting them take it from you. So that's something people get backwards. YouTube is a tool. It's not a goal, or at least it shouldn't be. If you're an entertainer, maybe that's different. But I'd still argue that if you're an entertainer, it's a tool to become like Matt Rife or Zach Justice or Andrew Schultz and become like a comedian that gets a Netflix comedy show. In that case, YouTube's a stepping stone. It is a tool, not a goal. So even with entertainment, that could be a thing. It could be, hey, you're becoming a big YouTuber so you can meet these people, so you can network with them, so you can have these opportunities. You work with these companies. So like really think about it from that perspective and not make it in and of itself the goal. Make it the goal that takes you to the destination. So have a vision that you're going off of. For the video side, for the YouTube channel, one, podcast probably should live on its own channel most of the time and have its own dedicated branding and such. Two, make sure you get the most flattering pictures possible of your guest and then put those in the thumbnails and have those people front and center. Have branded thumbnails that make sense and show consistency. Publish usually at a consistent and frequent cadence with the podcast. And like I said, get videos and clips and have a clip show, whether that's on other social medias. You could argue either way of putting clips on the channel and putting shorts on the podcast channel. These days, I actually think that that's okay to do, but some people want to monetize more than one channel and expand the reach for ad revenue. Some people also want to do that because the notification system only does 3 notifications in 24 hours. Some people have benefited from posting 3 or 6 clips a day, so they get a clips channel for that reason. Shorts don't affect those notifications going out. So that's the technical reason why people do these multiple channels is it's surface area. It's multiple times to show up in the homepage.
I'm thinking about it because,
the analytics.
Okay.
It depends.
All right.
It depends. It's situation by situation. It's situation by situation because it's also about what you're trying to use it to do. So it's different for everybody. It may not be the same thing for a comedy podcast as it might be for something more interview or educational. It really depends. And also, you might not have the bandwidth to go that far in the early days. So then in the early days, the focus would be do the podcast channel on YouTube. And then the clips are really for your other social media platforms. And then you use those clips and they either go to the audio podcast or to your newsletter. And the reason is either of those things are easier to get sponsors for on lower numbers at first than the YouTube videos lower numbers. So even with lower numbers, it is easier to become the top 10% of the podcasting in your niche on audio, and it's easier to get to a reasonable email list number that makes you attractive to brands than it is to get to the YouTube numbers that brands might be looking for. So that's why you would take that approach because then it's just easier to market. Then you also, again, with the clips on the multiple other platforms, you have the aggregate number of those for your reach. So you can also then package that up. So those things all help you. So that would probably be most of my best advice for the podcast side. The other thing is obviously you want to get the best microphone possible. And then you probably want to run it through AI software to then get studio quality from there in a click or two.
Listen, the more subscribers we have, the better the guests get. So please hit subscribe. Let's get back into the show. I'm familiar with Halataha.
No, not familiar.
She has the Young and Profiting podcast. And one thing she does, she hires VAs to message people on LinkedIn and different platforms to listen to her podcast. So it's a consistent.
Yeah, I don't love that strategy because most people resent the DMs in LinkedIn because they're expecting something from a personal, professional connection. They're expecting an opportunity to come through. If I was expecting an opportunity or a job offer, and then it came through as, hey, listen to this dope podcast, I'd be kind of upset. And I'd also be, because like most people, their DM is something that is in LinkedIn, specifically is something where they're hoping for someone in their network to come through for them with a job opportunity or a business opportunity. So when it becomes something that just becomes content spam, that people resent it.
Yeah, fair. And the other thing she does is advertise on other podcast platforms like like Pod Player and like
Acast.
Acast. I don't know about Acast, but like the actual platforms. I don't think Acast is a player. I don't believe. If I'm not mistaken.
That one's a hosting platform.
It's a hosting, exactly. Whereas Pod Player is actual
advertising in some of those platforms, though.
Exactly. Spotify.
Some of them have also direct networks too. There's pod.
Exactly. So, what are your thoughts on buying ads for podcast growth?
I only really believe in it if the podcast itself is also something that scales a business-based personal brand, because I just don't believe in buying an audience with advertising. Advertising for me exists for the purpose of selling something. If it's advertising, it's there to sell a product or it's there to sell a service, or at least at a minimum, grow an email list that does. So I don't believe in audience building through buying ads. I believe in organic methods of audience building almost exclusively, because remember, I believe that the answer is not to go a mile wide and an inch deep, like we talked about before. And the thing is,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, that's what advertising ends up doing in most cases. Now, that works effectively when the ROI for it is that you sell something for 10, 100, $1,000, then 1 out of 10,000 people converting is fine. You know, that's when that happens, that makes sense. 10 out of 10,000 people converting, that makes sense for what the ad spend is. I just don't feel like spending that to grow an audience makes sense. Now, the exception to that is if you're paying $1 per email list lead, $1 per subscriber for email list lead. If it's qualified leads and you sell something on the back end, then that makes sense. It makes sense if you, let's say you did email referrals through like ConvertKit's network, for example, right? The paid referrals, paid recommendations. If you did that and anyone who lists your thing as a paid referral, they get $1 commission. And let's say you spent, you know, 20,000, but it's 20,000 to get specific qualified leads, and it actually makes sense. It's 20,000, but let's say that the thing that you sell for those qualified leads, let's say that you were only doing something with you, those are 20,000. Let's say that those were 20,000 video editors, and you either had a video editing software or a video editing plugin or a video editing course like Parker from Full Time Filmmaker, right? Full Time Filmmaker. I think they have like a $299 course or something, right? It's like $299.
Yeah, very affordable.
Yeah, very and it's very good. It's robust. So this is where I do defend like course sellers, because it's like I may be spoiled in the fact that I know the good ones, you know, but I also have the discernment to know when something is and isn't worth it, which is why I've tried to pass on. But in a situation like, say, Parker's, if he were to get 20,000 leads of video editors that are serious, that do video editing as a business and like work for clients, content creators, do UGC, all that stuff, then if he paid 20,000 for leads, and let's say in his case, out of those 20,000 people, he sells 100 of the 299 course, then he made like 29,000. He made like $30,000 selling only 100 people out of 20,000. Now we know that that's not even the best ROI, but he still would be profitable because he'd still be $10,000 over what he spent to get.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not unreasonable. But like I use the worst case scenario of paying for 20,000 leads and only closing 100 of them of your exact customer. The closer reality to that is if he bought those 20,000 leads, he probably would get 500 sales initially off of that. And at 299, then he's going to clear $149,000 minus his initial 20,000 investment. He's going to clear still over six figures, over 100,000. That's where that sort of thing makes sense. But you'd have to have an offer that makes sense for the leads. And then you'd have to know that you're going to have at least some type of decent transaction conversion rate there that is reasonable, because you had to qualify those leads very, very specifically. So offer lead sales, as Hormozy would say, right? So do I have an offer? Then it makes sense maybe to go through the effort to acquire these leads at cost. If I have an offer where a minimal amount of them have to buy before I get enough sales to justify what I spent and still be profitable and repeat the virtuous cycle of doing so. So that would be the business reason to do it. Other than that, I just don't see the value in paying to grow an audience without a business on the back end. I think it ends up wasting people's money, and that's not what I'm really about doing.
Yeah, I hear you. Makes sense.
Oh, I'm
Awesome,
going to
man.
make. They think they're going to make money off the AdSense. The problem with the AdSense is it's a tenth of a penny per view. So that's why I can't make the ROI work. Oh, well, I'll get all this, or I'll get the brand deals. And then do you know the brands are paying like that? Have you done the research? Do you know what your rate card is going to be? Like, people need to understand. So that's why I'm more for the look. And if it, by the way, it's not that it has to be a course. I tell people all the time, physical products, merchandise, hats for the entertainers, that might be the thing. If you're building your brand as a comedian or a musician, or you're a vlogger, but you really dream of being a singer, you could build up the vlogging audience and then they will love you for, they already love you, so then they'll buy and support your music and your music career. That's what happened for my friend Gabby Hanna. She's like a famous YouTuber who became a Billboard musician back in the day, because she came from Vine. She came from Vine. She built up an audience on Vine. They loved her on Vine. Translated to YouTube where they're doing story time vlogs. Translated to them supporting her music career. Um, Same thing happened with KSI. KSI went from gaming to then reaction content to then doing all kinds of stuff. And then people supported his music career and his boxing career. So, that sort of thing. But all of that was organic. None of those people bought their audience. That was all organic. So I think that you can have a depth of relationship on organic that paying for ads never do. Ads is great for a business transactional relationship. So that's why I think about it in that way. But for selling something, to your point, again, you might be like, oh yeah, I value that music every time or this, but it depends on what your utility is. You could be an educator and thought leader that has utility to someone that is in that higher level. Like for educators and people selling like courses and information products, that's you sell to the top 10, 20% of earners in America type situation. You sell to people who have disposable income and resources, and you're selling a tangible utility where if they get a skill or specific information or knowledge, the ROI of using that knowledge over and over throughout the course of a year is something where they will make more than the money back or save time based on their skill level that is equivalent to their hourly rate in such a way to where the time savings of being more efficient, like a productivity course may not make you money, but a productivity course will save you so much time that at your hourly rate, the ROI for the rest of your life is exponential. So that's why that sort of thing would make some kind of sense. Now, for people who have an entertainment-based audience, what they need to do is they need things that people can consume over and over again, like streaming music from Spotify, or even a beverage company like what KSI and Logan Paul did with Prime, Mr. Beast did with candy company, Feastables, and that sort of thing. It's these consumable products. And the thing is, even people who aren't necessarily the hugest YouTubers, they do get into some of these consumable product things, at least with merchandise. But then some other people get into things like, aside from other print on demand, they might go into things like journals. Or there are things in the crafting side that a lot of the female influencers will do that can be consumed or bought multiple times. So that sort of thing.
That makes a lot of sense. Basically relying on the customer to purchase and leveraging their mass distribution instead of relying on brands or AdSense to pay them. That makes a lot of
And it's
sense.
also direct to consumer. So it's direct to consumer. And then in different niches, it's different in every niche. Beauty niche, for example, what they would do is they would partner with a manufacturing company, and then they'll use their brand and their likeness and their relationship and leverage and do an offshoot of that. So for those beauty influencers, for the women in the audience, it might be a makeup palette. It might be certain types of brushes and things of that nature. In the cooking niche, it might be some type of pan or cast where it's with your specific like characters or cute design thing in the baking pans, or it might be
Mm.
your own line of sauces, for example. Like it might be that you build a hot sauce brand, or or marinades. So it would be that in the cooking niche. It could also that be that you also do publishing, like how I did my book. Like you could go into the publishing side in cooking or in travel, and you could do a series of books, and a lot of them could be coffee table books. They don't have to be purely education. They would be coffee table books.
Yep, yep. That's actually something that's like top of mind for me, man. Is coffee table books. I actually might cut this part out, but you know what? I'll leave it in. I'd love to get our audience's feedback on it. But I actually thinking about doing a coffee table book on um, entrepreneurs, black entrepreneurs.
Oh, that
Actually,
that's like, yeah. I think that you could do an inverse Humans of New York vibe. So instead of like with Humans of New York, it's people down on their luck, you show the these wonderful lifestyles of the people who made it, and you tell some of their story in
hmm
it. So like think like Humans of New York. What Brandon did is amazing. So like, yeah, do that, but it's like the opposite.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, this and like 100. I think so. Here's the idea I was thinking: 100 black entrepreneurs as a coffee table book. Then hiring different creators to design the cover.
So I don't think
You
you
know.
initially do that. as an MVP with the different creators to design the cover, just because from a cost perspective.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. That'd be a secondary. Yeah.
I think that after the success, you do a re-release with special edition covers that have
Mm-hmm.
some kind of like tangible value to why it would be this edition with the covers, and that's unique. And I think that the artist that you commission should have social media followings, so that it's a collab drop and it's a limited edition, and so that people
Exactly.
who loved and bought the book and support the project will then pick the limited edition thing that they want, or even all of them. And then it has a collectible aspect built in, but then there's a reason for it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what I'm thinking. So I appreciate you co-signing that. You know, because I'm trying to think of how to execute it. So I think it could be an interesting next step for the business. You
Yeah.
know, but
Oh,
with that being said, man, I just want to say thank you for your time, man. I appreciate the conversation and the back and forth. You know, it's good to have an engaging conversation. You know.
yeah, no, I appreciate this. And this like went like more in depth, and I like that. And I like that we got to like some like tangibles and some like real things people can take action on. Like, hey, do this, look at
Mm-hmm.
this situation. I like that. And again, I appreciate a good faith debate about like the course thing. Cause you have to remember, you're making the argument I was thinking of the way I used to think like 8 years ago. Five
Mm.
years ago, I used to think a lot more about that. But again, as I got out of some of my bubble, and I also looked at, well, wait a minute, what does the data say? Because I'm a very data driven guy. I want to like real world lived experiences matter, but sometimes bad things happen when we sometimes look at, I had a bad experience, and then we project that as the reality of the whole world. The world is probably a better place than we want to believe it is. I want people to understand that there's every reason to be optimistic, just not delusional. Most people are good. Most people are not out to get you. Most people mind their own business. Like, and then, both of us, we know this. We know that like 98% of our group gets blamed for what 2% of people do. And we know that's unreasonable.
Yeah.
So like that's where I'm like, I want to know exactly how bad something is before I like exaggerate a problem. And I want to narrow it down to, okay, and deal with things case by case, deal with people as individuals instead of like this niche is bad, this thing is bad. Yeah, which I don't think you're doing. I'm just pointing out that
Mm-mm.
in general, there is so much upside. We live in the greatest time that has ever been to be a human. The 21st century is wild. Our ancestors could have never dreamed of any of the opportunities that are on the table today. People have every reason to be positive about their future. There's a lot of bad things out there. Yes, the news drills it into our head 24/7 to be fearful of everyone and everything. But I'm here to tell you, after 40 years on God's green earth, that most of my experiences and interaction with most human beings have been good. And it's not like I've never been through anything in my life. I literally, I live in Georgia. Come on. And I grew up a military brat. Come on. But
Oh, really?
yeah, my dad was a Marine, 27 years. Um,
Okay.
so like the reality though is most people are good, inherently good. And it's not even close. The bad people give everyone else a bad rap, and it really sucks. And when people are bad, they're bad. But the thing is, you live in the most blessed time there's ever been to be an entrepreneur, to be a creative, to be a person of color, to be anything that you could even fathom or dreamed of. You have opportunities that could not have been imagined right now just a few short years ago. All of this was pie in the sky. No one believed that when I was in community college, I told my professors that within 10 years, and this is in 2002, I told them within 10 years, every company in America will want and need a website, and they won't be taken seriously if they don't have one. They clowned me publicly and laughed at me and called me arrogant. I was right. I was proven right. The same thing is happening in the world of content creation right now. People don't think this is a real career, a real job. If it's not, tell the IRS to stop taxing it like one. Yeah, real talk. And the thing is, I know that another 10 years for sure, that this will be just as normal as web design is, just like how all those years ago, 20 years ago, my professors didn't believe in web design. They believed in print media. I know that people don't believe in content creation being real today and they think it's a passing fad. They said the same thing about social media marketing until 2016 when it decided elections for people. Then they took it seriously. Some point in the next 10 years, people will undeniably take content creation seriously. All the data supports it. Even right now, the Nielsen ratings that they do put YouTube right behind Disney. YouTube beat Netflix, that was number 6. It beat Fox, that was number 7. It beat Amazon Prime, that was number 8 for streaming. It's number 1 is Disney, number 2 is YouTube, and it's very close. And that tells you that the future is bright if you want to be a content creator.
Big gems. Big gems. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, our apps for the show. This is what you can control. So control your grind and control your life. I'm Alex. And you are?
Oh, I'm Roberto Blake. Find me everywhere at Roberto Blake in social media.
There you go. Peace.